It's happening. It's coming towards us.
Well, I am thrilled to have with us Roger Hallam from the UK, who is an amazing activist. And as a lot of you may know, Roger is the original founder, with others, of Extinction Rebellion. And I even knew people in the United States that were involved with Extinction Rebellion. Several years ago, I drive around with a sticker, an Extinction Rebellion sticker on my vehicle. So it is my great honor, Roger, to welcome you to Environmental Coffee House.
Yeah, great. Can't wait.
Can't wait. Oh boy. All right. So I guess I want to start with let's go with, maybe for those who don't know you, a little bit about you, about civil disobedience, about your experiences that led to you being imprisoned, and then where we go. How do we create a revolution here in the United States where we are in the precipice of falling off the cliff? So let's start with you. Who are you, Raj?
Well, first of all, thanks very much, Sandy, and sorry for keeping not quite getting there in terms of having a chat with you, but I'm here now. And hello, everyone that's listening to you, and yeah, all good. So, yeah, a little bit about myself. Well, obviously, I'm from the UK. I was involved in activism quite a lot in the 1980s. I'm 58 now. So I was a teenager. I sat down in a road when I was 15, I think. I left university after a year, went to prison several times for the peace movement before I was 21. And then I've done various forms of social activism. I was an organic farmer for 20 years. Obviously, the climate sort of put pay to that to a certain extent in Wales. And then I did research on how to cause trouble, as I like to put it, at a big posh institution, university in London. And I helped do the foundational work for Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil in Slate Britain. And I've helped to build, quite a lot of the largest climate campaigns in the Western world. And I natter away on Twitter and various other things every now and again, as you know.
Oh, I follow you. I follow everything you do. And I have been telling everybody that I was going to get to interview you. So, I'm pretty excited. So, given your background, it's a lot of civil disobedience. Can you tell us how you learned and what you learned from civil disobedience?
Well, as I said, I was sort of imbued with the whole civil disobedience idea as a teenager. I was brought up in the Christian church and what have you, so obviously I had that sort of influence. And so I had quite a lot of practical experience of it. And then I spent a year studying Gandhi. I sort of dropped out of university and read quite a lot about it. And then I sort of revisited it, I suppose, after I finished being a farmer. And I suppose what happened between the 1980s and the present time is There's a lot more social scientific investigation in
Mm-hmm.
the psychology of it, and how to systematize it, I suppose. So what I've been involved with is very practical work, really. I don't, sit around. Well, I do sit around waffling on, but I do quite a lot of frontline designing.
Yeah.
So people will come to me and they say, "Oh, I want to, organize a campaign in Italy," and then I'll do a design and help them along, mentor them, and then obviously pass them on to other people. I don't have, a big organization I'm in charge of or anything like that. I'm very much a person that works in a formally powerless position, as it were, because that's what I like to do. Because if you're formally in charge of people, then obviously I think problems happen. Well, if you don't have any official position, it's not nice if you can say what you like.
Sure. You're like, the advisor.
Yeah, something like that.
Hmm.
And I've had quite a lot of success, but that's mainly because I work with a larger network of people who are very interested in how to create revolutionary change. And dare I say, a lot of has been learnt from the American tradition, and of course, the American tradition has learnt from other traditions, indigenous
Absolutely.
traditions, Gandhi, and what have you. So it's all a big mishmash, as we know. And I can tell you a few tricks if you like, but that's
Why not? Why not? Give us
Well,
give us one little anecdote trick.
okay. Well, the first kind of thing that comes into my mind, and maybe we're going to talk about this a bit,
Hmm.
is culture and organisation. So a lot of people like focus on the frontline stuff, which is all well and good. There's a lot to be said about how you relate to the police and how you relate to the public and the press and all that sort of stuff. But what I found, from doing empirical research, as it were, it's not like I'm ideologically attached to this proposition, but the basic proposition is you need a central organization, and you need to trust that organization, and it needs to be competent and responsive and humane, and it needs to be in charge.
Unlike
And
government.
yes, well,
Unlike it.
there's I'm not
Yeah.
I'm not a utopian. I'm not saying
Yeah.
that therefore this is going to bring forward some utopian future. It certainly
No.
isn't. However, we're not, as I'm sure your listeners know, we're not in the luxurious position of being able to choose between lots of options. We basically have to
Right.
choose the best worst option. And the best worst option, in my view, on the basis of starting up a lot of campaigns, is the first step is to get a bunch of people who are going to basically run the show. Not permanently, obviously. They're going to bring
Hmm.
other people in, and they need to know how to run things well. And that's a lot about culture and relationships. Obviously, it's about strategy as well. You need to be doing something that works, but it's all about how you treat each other and how you induct people and the culture you create. So, for instance, in Just Stop Oil, which has been probably the biggest climate campaign in the UK, it's got 95% name recognition and what have you. There's always people running around doing antisocial things, as you might say. But
Yep.
behind all that, a few hundred people who work part time and full time, and they have a culture, right, of trust and service and respect. And unless you've got that, you're basically just going to be going round in circles, which is one of, with all due respect, and it is a lot of respect. That's one of the biggest problems in the States, and not just in the States, but
Oh.
generally the tradition of Western individualism, as I would call it, which is,
Hmm.
even though a lot of people who say they're on the left, sort of display behavior which is really at the center of the capitalistic relationship, transactional relationships, which is a big problem. Let's put it like that.
Transactional
How was that?
relationships. Well, having lived my whole life in the United States, I completely concur with you on your assessment of our country and its hegemony and what's happening here. It's just not sustainable.
Hmm.
But let's talk about, before we go any further, the campaign started because of our climate crisis and overshoot. So,
Hmm.
where's a little philosophy behind how you feel about where we're going, headed as a species, and the predicament we're in?
Yeah, well, I think the first thing to say is the phrase climate change and climate crisis is the wrong phrase, right? The phrase is the murder of,
Everything.
the murder of
Yeah.
common people by the elites. And it's, as I'm sure the phrase climate change was created by the corporate PR departments
Yep.
to focus on the tool of murder rather than the murderer.
Okay.
And it's the murderer we need to focus on, which is the people who run the government and the large corporations. In other words, we need to frame this as a crime of humans against other humans and, of course, nature. And once we frame it like that, then we can start to analyze it in terms of strategy and ethics and all the rest of it and what our responsibilities are. So, I'm on the verge of writing something saying, everyone needs to stop using the phrase climate change, right? It's not
I had
about
said that a while back in my shows, and I said we need global warming. That's what it is. We need overshoot. But I used it today because that's the framing that so many people use. So I'm glad that you brought that up to reframe it.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
I mean, all of that is just the mechanism, right? You don't
Hmm.
say, concentration camps killed the inmates. The Nazis killed the inmates, right? It wasn't the concentration camp. You see what I mean? So we
Yes.
need to focus on the origin of the originators of the crime, and then we're clearer. We're clearer what we're dealing with, because then we can situate it in the 5 to 10,000 year story of, humans killing humans for an extractive, for life philosophy and all the rest of it, right? So that's really step one.
Okay.
Step two is obviously to analyze what the physics is and what have you. And, I'm not particularly interested in the debate of whether, we're completely done for or we're 90% done for or
Yeah.
80% done for. Because, and this is the other thing I really want to try and communicate, I suppose, is we need to release ourselves from what I would call the mental slavery of of deciding what to do on the basis of the world around us. We should decide what to do on the basis of how we want to live our lives. So it doesn't actually matter whether we're doomed or not. It doesn't matter whether it's 90%, 80%, 70%. What matters is, how do you want to live your life? And the question, how you want to live your life, is an ancient question that sort of went out of fashion, with the whole extractive instrumentalist philosophy that came out of, the Enlightenment and all this stuff. And of course, this is like massively embedded in the secular left, as well as the secular right. It's this notion that we need to be successful, we need to work out what to do, and then we'll decide whether we're going to do it. So, I've done like
Wow.
several hundred public meetings, and you'll be familiar. So you go to a public meeting, and you'll say, right, we're fucked. We're going over 1.5. We're going to cover, 2 degrees. You go through it all, and then you split into small groups, and you know what happens. People will go, well, I'm not going to do something unless it works. And that's the
Good.
most revolutionary orientation, right? The first thing we need to understand about the revolutionary tradition is it's a virtue ethics orientation. What I mean by that is people do stuff because it's right. And they also do stuff because it's exciting, because you're 70 years on this planet, 60, 50, 80, whatever it is. And you just want to have an exciting life, right? And having an exciting life is not being a slave to yourself
Yes.
or to state. So it doesn't matter whether you win or not, right? And as it happens, as a social researcher, I'm of the opinion, and I think this is a robust proposition, is it's those people that just want to live their lives and want to do the right thing and just want to go for it who actually are the most effective change makers, because they don't suffer from what's called a collective action problem. So a collective action problem is an American invention, right? From American rational people. No disrespect intended, of course.
Oh,
But
don't worry. We can handle it. We're
but
tough. Yeah.
the notion is unless you're going to get somewhere, you don't do it. And of course, there's no point doing anything rationally, because the ruling class is always going to win, right? Because they're more powerful. So what a lot of people on the left do is they basically do the work of the ruling class by creating a sort of deterministic, negative message, and everyone competes on how fucked they think we are, as if that's radical, that's reactionary. What's revolutionary is to say, fuck where we're up to. We're just going to go and have a fucking good time. You see what I mean? So I'll just give you a little historical example of this. There's loads, and this is a bit provocative. But, there was a revolutionary called Danton, right? He was a French revolutionary. He was done in by Robespierre. I'm not saying he was great or not great, right? But the upshot of it is he did the business, as you might say.
Did the
right?
business. Yeah.
For better or worse. And then when he was on the way to get guillotined, by Robespierre, I don't know whether it's actually true, but it doesn't really matter really. But apparently he said, "Look what we've done. Look what we've done. We've lived our life and we've done amazing things." So he didn't give a shit that he was going to die, right?
Wow.
What he was just full of the passion of just being a revolutionary, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Now that doesn't mean he's a great guy. It doesn't mean his strategy is going to work. It doesn't even mean he's a good person. He might, end up killing loads of people, and no doubt he would. But this is the foundation. Unless you get the foundations right, you're going to be fucked, within 6 months. And the problem with the whole ideology that is promoted by the left and the right to young people is the ideology of instrumental logic, which is don't do it unless it's going to work.
Yes.
Right. And I've been guilty of that as well, because, at the beginning of XR, I was going, hey, if 10,000 people commit civil disobedience, you're going to get somewhere. But I was sort of misunderstood because I was sort of assuming that you've already got that philosophical, sort of almost religious basis of, I don't care whether we're going to win or not, I'm going to go and do this. So a lot of the burnout that, Western individualists suffer from is because they have a sort of slave mentality. They have this extractive mentality, which of course is externalized into the physical world, right?
Mm-hmm.
Digging stuff up and destroying nature. But they have the same attitude towards themselves, which is they're going to extract from themselves. You see what I mean? They don't have a notion of just enjoying it, I might say. And for me, I've been to prison lots of times, blah blah blah. I can be nice and self-pitying, but the classic revolutionaries didn't have self-pity. That's the point. They just went for it. And we can talk about how you build on that foundation in a minute, right? But for me, that's a really good starting point.
It is a good starting point. I've always said that even if we know what the big picture is in the predicament, it's always worth the fight to try to do what's right and not go down with a ship of negative fools. The ship of fools, which is in the United States, will be the fascist takeover of our country, basically. Do we want to go down like that? No, we don't. So I that's why I'm attracted to your philosophy, because it feels very akin to what I think about and how to do this, and who I want to communicate with, which is the younger people in the United States specifically, who are grasping and looking for someone to help them understand, how can we make change? Is it possible to have a revolution? Is it? The last time they felt anything exciting was Bernie Sanders. And then, of course, they were just destroyed by the system. And we need to have that help here. What would you say to left progressive people that are looking to make the changes, that understand the big pictures, that are tired of being wage slaves, are tired of looking at a future that is a climate apocalypse? Whether or not it's going to be, there's still a reason why to get up every morning and fight for something. Talk to them.
Yeah. But, what I'm trying to say is really quite foundational and and basic. And unless you have the basics in place, we'll talk about strategy in a minute, right?
Okay.
But the basics is Bernie Sanders gets crushed. So fucking what? That's the attitude. It's not like Bernie Sanders gets crushed. Oh my God, poor me. You see what I mean? It's a completely different attitude. It's like, so what? Like I've just been listening to, I think it's Bolivia, right? This South American revolutionary.
Yeah.
He landed in Venezuela like 4 times, right? The first time he landed, he lasted about a week. And every time, if he had the modern attitude of being going, oh, poor me, he didn't have a poor me attitude. He went, okay, pick myself up and we're going again. And then he got fucked over again. And then he picked himself up and he did it again. And that's the foundational attitude, right? And it's not moral or anything. It's about who you think you are and why you want to live your life. That's the key question. And what we need to do, like our generation, Sandy, is stop that defeatism of the left infecting, 16, 17, 18-year-olds who are full of the joy of life. They want to just fucking go for it. You see what I mean?
Yes.
And we need to say to them, just fucking go for it. Don't let all the doomers and the defeatists and the rationalists go, oh, isn't it terrible, Bernie Sanders, terrible things happen. So what? Shit happens.
We moved on.
We don't, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, right? Because we don't control the world. This is the fundamental conceit of Western civilization. The notion that we control what's going to happen. You see what I'm saying? We don't fucking control anything. We're going to be dead soon, right? The only question is what's the guy called? Camus said, right? You either commit suicide or you decide to live your life. If you want to commit suicide, go and do it. The mid 20th century guys didn't mince their words because they'd gone through the Nazis, hadn't they? Right?
Yeah.
This guy ran the main magazine against the Nazis in underground France. He knew what it was like to get up in the morning and not know whether he was going to be alive, And I'm not glamorizing it. All I'm saying is there's a really clear idea that if you want to be a rebel, then you've got to decide to be a rebel. You can't decide to be a rebel only if the going's good. You see what I mean?
Right. Because the going may not be good. I mean, we are in a predicament that could be just detrimental. Well, it is, as I see it.
So the first thing is to ignore the world and just decide what you want to do. You see what I mean?
Yep.
So the second step.
Okay.
So I'm going to do my little manifesto here for you.
But we
about violence. We wanted to talk about violence and all this sort of stuff. So let me preempt you to go on to the next step, right? The next fundamental revolutionary step, right? The first one is from self-pity to enjoying yourself. The second revolutionary step, before we actually get out the door and start sitting on roads and things, the second fundamental step is to decide that you are not separate from the other, right? There is no separation fundamentally between you and your enemy, right? Which doesn't mean that they're not your enemy. It doesn't mean you're going to not go out and fight them. But there's not an absolute separation, because absolute separation is at the heart of the fascist extractive proposition, right? Nature is there. It's nothing to do with us. And we're going to fuck over that nature because it's nothing to do with us. We all know it is. Not in some sort of hippie, woo-woo sort of way, but in physics, right?
Yeah.
Physics has shown that we're part of a common consciousness and all this sort of stuff, right? So is ancient wisdom, so is indigenous wisdom. So we just have this like little Western idea that you're there, Sandy, and you're nothing to do with me, and I'm Roger, and nothing to do with you. That's bollocks. It's metaphysically bollocks, right? It's not about morality. So when you go out and talk to your enemy, right? And I've talked to a few of my enemies. I treat them with respect, not because I'm trying to be nice, but because they are actually, in some sense, in some fundamental sense, the same as me. And this is the foundational, rejection of violence, because the essence of violence is fascism. In fascism is the fundamental othering of the opponent, the absolute othering. That's what justifies you killing them. And this is all well and good, and we've had 10,000 years of it. But for me and for people that are working on what the new civilization looks like, is we have to once and for all leave that tradition behind, right? The foundational sort of the basis of the new civilization has to be connection, which doesn't mean we're not going to go into conflict, but we're not going to start killing people. As soon as you start killing people, it's the same as the capitalist. You're the same as the fascist, fundamentally, right? But what I'm trying to say here is, like, in these big debates, people like to make it, violence. It's a tool. Violence is, it's a morality. I'm saying, like, violence is a metaphysics. It's a mechanism of degeneration of the human spirit. And there's overwhelming empirical evidence, in so much as you want to talk about that, that as soon as you introduce the violent proposition into a social space, it degenerates towards hierarchy, secrecy, abuse, corruption, right?
Especially when the side you are being violent against has a hell of a lot more firepower than you do.
So the key point here, and I talk to a lot of Americans about this. They say, "Oh, these fuckers, they've done this to us, they've done that to us. So we need to go and get them." When you go and get them, you're getting yourself. That's the point. It's not a moral point. It's you're corrupting yourself. So, after World War II, when people, started killing the Nazis as a revenge, they had this revelation that they didn't want to lower themselves to the level of Nazis by killing Nazis. You see what I'm saying? What they want to do is go and create what they decided to do. Not all of them, of course, but a lot of them, they followed that argument and said, we're going to create the new world. We're not going to lower ourselves into bitter, violent, revolutionary, macho, fuck you sort of stuff, right? Because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work, right? And also, you're just going to end up excluding, over time, you exclude everyone who's not a young man.
Yeah.
You exclude women, you exclude old people, you exclude weak people, you exclude kids. The essence of revolution is the participation of everyone in the new social project. You do not exclude people. And the essence of violence is exclusion of people within your own side, and of course, the denigration and death of your opponent. So, these are two foundational things. You've got to get your ducks in a row, metaphysically, philosophically, spiritually, before you can go out and do the business. And if you don't, then you'll replicate the patterns of the opponent, and you become your opponent, and you collapse into a mess, right? And so many young people, as we know, that do 6 months of activism, and then they burn out, right? I mean, I've been working 12 hours a day for 40 years, right? I never burn out. Why do I never burn out? Because I'm not attached. You see what I mean?
And you're passionate.
I'm passionate, but I'm not attached.
To the outcome. I'm human, right? You're not attached to the outcome.
To the outcome. I'm not attached to my and I'm not attached to my bitterness. Like the police could come round tonight. They come round every 2 months. They come into my flat. They'll nick my stuff. They go through my room. They'll take my computer and stuff. They'll stick me in a cell for 24 hours. They'll threaten me with prison, whatever it is. And I'm going, like, part of me's going, what fuckers, right? And another part of me's going, Roger, don't give in to that shit.
Yeah.
You need to be strong, because you need to come out and go, what the fuck? I don't care.
Why are you like. And why are you such a threat to them?
Well, that comes on to the third element, right? Which is what actually to do. So you can, the big problem is loads of spiritual people are saying they're super detached, and loads of, hippie type people are going, oh, I love my enemy. Well, that's all fucked unless you're in resistance, right? So this is where the left-wing people are perfectly right, is you have to go out and challenge the injustice of the world, right? But you're going out on a firm basis. When you go out and challenge the injustice of the world, the fundamental principle is to create disruption. That's what I'm well known for. If you see what I mean, that's my day job, right? I go around the world, and there's some, young guys in Argentina, and they're going, it's all fucked here. And I go, well, here's the basis of it. I go through the basis. If you're cool with the foundational stuff, then let's look at how we're going to create a movement in Argentina, right? And they were going, okay, you need a central core, you need a
Mm-hmm.
demand, you need a mobilization strategy, and you need to go and call shit, right? You
Call
need to
shit.
go, you need to go to some big ceremony where the leader's, having an ice cream with his wife or something, and you go up and, you throw something over them. Let's put it like that, right? You see, and that'll get you in the national news, and then 1,000 kids in Argentina are going to contact you on social media and go, "What the fuck? That was great," and off you go. Then you're going to integrate them, and there's a whole load of technicalities about how you induct them and how you train them and how you're nice to people and how you go, right, next time we're going to block the motorways or whatever you're going to do. But you're doing it as a disciplined army. You see, this is the point.
Yeah, a
It's like,
disciplined army without violence, which was one of the questions I had posed to my Discord group, and I read it to you, and you already answered it without me having to read it about how are we going to abandon the doctrine of white liberal nonviolence and take up arms? But you answered that, and so I thought you did a very good job of that.
yes,
Thank you.
because the disease of the world is a disease of the spirit, right? That's the problem. So the problem with our culture is it's totally materialistic. When you're going up against the opponent, it's not fundamentally a
Mhm.
material struggle.
Mhm.
It is to a certain extent because you want to go on strike and make sure the capitalists can't produce goods. So that's a material side. But the real battle is for the hearts and souls of the social space. Your own side, you're speaking to your own side, you're speaking to the public, and you're speaking to the opponent. And through the persistence and discipline and disruption of your campaign, you're going to break through. Not always, of course. This is not a car engine. It's a complex system, as they say. So you might do all the right things and you're still fucked. Or you might just push through and everyone thinks you're great. But again, it doesn't matter because you're going to carry on. And obviously, if some things aren't in place, you go away for the weekend and you rejig the bits and then you go again, right?
Yeah.
Because you're just going to go over and over again. And this is what the revolutions did, right, for decades over the last 200 years. You read about them. Spent half their life in prison, half of them got shot, and a few of them got through and took over the state. And our project is to take over the state. That's that's the final sort of thing to say. Is this is not about performative activism. It's not
Right.
about neoliberal, positioning tokenism. It's not about who thinks what, who says what on social media. That's all bollocks, right? That's the distraction of the capitalist gaze, if you see what I mean.
Yeah,
You know,
I'm distracted by it a
it's
lot.
sons and daughters of capitalists, going through a phase before they become bankers, all that business, right?
Oh,
Putting
yes.
on the road. So what we need to focus on is mobilizing people that have got skin in the game. So that's not like the kids at university. It's about going out to the suburbs of the cities, to the working class areas, and holding assemblies and listening to people that do all the essential work in society and being in service to them. That's the critical message for the young people of the Western world, right? Is to leave university. There's no point saying you're radical and staying at university because university is a mechanism of creating privilege. I left university went after a year because I sussed it out, right? I went to India and I saw, I was in this civil rights movement in India when I was 18, people getting shot, people getting raped. And the main guy there said, Roger, fuck off back to the first world and have a revolution. I don't want you pissing around in India, pretending to get some brownie points. Get
Wow.
back and do the job. So I went back. I was one of the top students at LSE, so I had a nice career in front of me. And I
Hmm.
just left. And it was the best decision I made
Yes.
because my fundamental integrity was being challenged by participating, in an institution which is simply there to create the privilege and the oppression of the vast majority of the world.
Well,
And that's what a revolutionary is.
yes.
It's nothing to do with positions, it's whether you're in the system or not. if you're in the system, you're part of the system.
I
You
was
need
22 years in
Exactly.
higher education.
But you need to celebrate that decision. You see what I mean? You need to say, what the fuck? I don't want to be at university. I'm going to leave.
I did.
We did,
I
right?
did.
Hello. I mean, I had a
And then
great 2 years.
I started this whole thing, which was a metamorphosis from
Yeah.
not knowing how bad everything was and being
Mm.
that person who is more about the planet and the green, the animals, and all, to really realizing the enormity of the predicament over time.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I do see a lot of people struggling on how to do this in the United States, how to become part of something that's bigger than themselves, how to
Mm.
make a movement. A lot of people are very much into workers' rights and
Mm.
like a universal basic income, something that helps people that are wanting to be able to be part of a revolution to make changes regardless, but are
Mm.
homeless or living in their car or having to find a next meal and, just live. So,
Yeah.
how do you show them that this is not just a privileged position to be a revolutionary?
Well, you show people by actions, not words, right? Like I'm
Hmm.
chatting to you on here. I don't have some massive expectation, it's going to influence all your audience because
No,
it's just
I
a guy
want you to
like me,
teach
not,
them.
right? But there will be, maybe there's 5 or 10 people who listen to this and they go, fuck yeah, this guy's right. And then they'll have that moment of epiphany. And, dare I say it, the world is changed by very few people. I know it's a cliche, but it's actually true. Like the team of people that I work with, we've been the instigators of a whole bunch of movements
Hmm.
because we have a certain culture and we have a certain system. Now, I'm not saying like it's the last word in the matter, by the way,
Right.
but a few people can have a massive effect as it happens. So you haven't got that excuse of going, oh, it's just me. It's like, no, you're really powerful. You can create the revolution, right? Maybe not, but you don't say you can't because that's just not historically literate.
Right.
A few people create revolutions, and they go off and they do it for the reason I said. The other thing is like the big problem, big problem when talking to Americans is they always want to talk about how shit everything is. That's really boring, right? What we need to talk about is the positives. The positives are time, right? Everyone's got time, and everyone's got a bit of space. How can we create, 10 people in Chicago into 100 people in Chicago into 1,000 people?
Yeah.
That's the question, right?
Yeah.
And as you know, if you watch my videos and stuff, and I can do a little plug for Designing a Revolution or whatever, so there's 50
I
episodes.
want you to.
there's 50 episodes, so you can, there's a lot to all this, right?
Yes.
But the upshot of it is you start where you are. Now, there is a certain sort of spiritual wisdom, which, I'm sure you're aware of, which is the only thing that exists is the here and now. The future doesn't exist and the past doesn't exist. Where you have agency, Sandy, is in the next 10 minutes. You see what I mean? That's all you have. And that's all you ever have. Everything else is some projection of your mind. So when I'm talking to young people, I'm saying like, without sounding like some self-help guru or something, I'm basically saying, what are you going to do in the next 7 days? Focus on
Yeah.
that, right?
What are you going to do in
And
the
then,
next
and then
7 days?
assess it. Yeah, what are you going to do? Well, you're going to talk to 2 or 3 of your mates. You're going to get them to watch 1 or 2 of my videos. You're going to have a chat, and then you're going to
Yeah.
make a plan. And
Yeah.
that plan's going to fail, and then you're going to learn from the failure of that plan, and then you're going to make another plan. And then
There you
about
go.
the 5th or 6th plan, something may happen or may not, right? Who knows? But it doesn't matter because you're actually planning. You're using the resources you have to build more resources, right? So that's what I always do. Like I was in Germany and, I was talking to 4 or 5, dare I say, miserable 20-year-old German students, right? And they said, everything's fucked, Germany is a terrible place. Everyone thinks their place is the worst place. You know what I
Right.
mean? Everyone has
Right.
that excuse. Oh, it wouldn't happen here, Roger. I'm going, whatever.
Well, not the right wing in the United States. They all have American flags. They think the United States is the be all and end all of everything.
Yeah. So that's not what we're thinking about. what we think, when I talked to these Germans, right, those 5
Mm-hmm.
Germans, I said, okay, we're going to make a plan. We're going to do an action. And we're going to get like 20 German guys together and we're
Yeah.
going to do an action, right? We're going to
Yeah.
sit on the motorway, whatever it was, can't remember. So they went and did that. And then he came back to me. And then I said, okay, where are you up to? And then I gave them a more general plan, co-designed it with them. Other people got involved. And then they created the biggest climate campaign in Germany, right? In about 9 months, right? Millions of pounds, hundreds of thousands of people on their database, brought the country to a standstill. It happens, and there's a method to it. And I'm not going to go through all the bits and pieces because it would just
Of
be really
course not.
boring for your listeners. What I'm saying is you don't have an excuse, right, to sit there thinking nothing can happen. And we know this from American history, right? I
Yeah.
mean, the big
Yeah.
paradox here is everyone's inspired by America, the good side of America. What happened in the 60s, right? What happened
Yes.
with the Jets? What happened in the revolution? What happened with the black struggles, the gay struggles? You know, what's he called? Kramer. What's that? What's
Oh,
his own?
the HIV,
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah,
activist. He was
yeah. What's his first
amazing.
name?
Larry. Was
He's
it
Larry
Larry?
Kramer. He's fucking great.
Yes.
He told me to swear. You know what I mean?
Larry.
He's
Larry.
like,
I
let it all hang
remember
out.
him.
Yeah, yeah. He was great, wasn't he? And why was he
Yes.
great? Because he just got up and he said, what the fuck? He said, if you don't get out onto the streets, you're going to fucking die. Stop being miserable and get on with the
And
job.
they did.
And they did, and they saved like thousands of lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the message to the young people today, right? Get out
Yeah.
on the street, otherwise you're going to die, you fuckers.
Yeah,
I'm
you
not
hear
here.
it? Get out on the
I'm not here
street,
to
guys.
entertain
No, but really, that
you.
that is inspirational. And if that hadn't happened, who knows? Because I
Well,
mean,
more people would have died, wouldn't they? But
I had
now,
friends that died. I mean, it was
yeah,
horrible.
but now the whole problem is global, isn't it? Right? It's
Global.
like global HIV, right? So this is it. This is the final challenge in some big, you know, spiritual
I
sense.
think so. I do. I
So
think that your thinking and your processes could be just the last real big effort before everything just tanks. But if we don't make the effort, what have we got to lose? What have
yeah,
we got to
absolutely.
lose but everything we've already lose, and we're going to lose it anyway?
But
And
there's a little wrinkle I want to point to in what you've just said, right?
okay,
So
give
this
me
is
the
one of the
wrinkle.
problems. The problem with the doomer position, right? They say, "Oh, it's too late. Everything's going to collapse." Right? That's not a very sophisticated position.
All
What
right.
happens historically is things collapse, the system collapses,
That's
and then there's a reaction. It's not the end of the society. You need to separate between the regime and the society. So what we can say with absolute certainty is all the fuckers that run the show, they're done, right? Capitalism's going to destroy itself. All the people that run the companies, they're done. The whole system's done. Okay, what happens after that? What happens after that is two things: a national democratic revival or fascism. So
yes.
there's a two steps to it. You see what I'm saying? There's the collapse of the system, and then there's the collapse of the whole society.
Mm-hmm.
And when you have the collapse of the system, you'll have millions of people wanting something else.
And
And that's where
ready.
the revolution comes in. What the
That's
revolutionaries say is, we don't want fucking fascism. Let's have democratic revolution. Let's have a revolution in the human spirit, a foundational revolution in human consciousness. And this is what it looks like. And you have a concrete plan, right? What's going to happen next Wednesday? Can't just be waffling on. And what we need to do as revolutionaries and people listening to this is we're waiting for that moment. So it's a positive interpretation of the doomsday story. See what I mean? Yeah, the system's going to collapse and no one's pretending that's going to be pretty. And it opened up this super exciting possibility to reconstruct the human spirit for the first time in 10,000 years, to actually get beyond that extractivist, poor me, materialistic, the foundations of the
okay.
capitalistic proposition. And it goes deeper than capitalism, as we all know, right? Capitalism's
Well,
been around
yeah.
for 500 years,
And
right?
my life is steeped in it.
Yeah, So so that again, that gives a more positive frame. You see what I mean? It's not like everything's going to collapse and everyone's going to die tomorrow. It's like
No,
everything's going to
absolutely not.
collapse,
And when people
and
say that, that's
there'll
not.
be there's going to be 3 million people in Washington, whether you like it or not, going, "We want a new society." You see, like this is what the Vietnam War did, right? To the '60s generation, right? They're all faffing around, not doing very much, and then as soon as there was like dead bodies, to be blunt about it, then
Yeah.
everyone got serious. And there will be lots of dead bodies if the truth be known, right? Because that's what the climate is. It's a death. It's mass death. So when that happens, and I'm not, by the way, welcoming it, just for the record, right?
No,
But the
who
fact of the
is?
matter is, it's coming.
Hmm.
Then it's a massive opportunity for us to step into responsibility and say, right, what we're going to have is assembly-based government. You see what I mean? And all these ideas that are emerging around how you can create a society around some sort of sanity. And we need to have the faith that we can do that, right? We may not, but to say we definitely can is just bollocks, right?
Yeah.
It's just not historically literate. People go through so much pain historically, and they come out the end of it, and they create something better. And they create something better not despite of that pain, but because of it, right? Because it
Mhm.
matures you, as we all know, right? Suffering matures you. It can fuck you up, but it also can mature you. And that's the humility that's going to come, right? Because at the moment we have this big humanist arrogance, don't we? Oh, we're Americans. Oh, we're
Oh,
Europeans. We can sort the world
sorry.
out. You know, we're in charge. We're not fucking in charge, are we?
No,
Right? We're not. Just get
absolutely
you know
not.
get with the program. It's very difficult to live your life. you know,
No,
da da
no,
da.
nothing is easy, but and we also have to be very careful that we don't take in the victim role and always put ourselves as a victim. I'm not a victim, and I don't want anybody to feel like they're a victim. Take that victim mentality and turn it into activism. Turn it
Yeah.
into something much better than, like you said, I'll say the poor me's or whatever. There's so much to do, so
Mm.
much to do, and you
Yeah.
have given
And
us guidance.
you I don't want to give the impression, just for to be clear, that shit doesn't happen and it's really upsetting. And there is such
Yeah.
a thing as being victimized, right? Horrible things happen to people. The
Yes.
point is people are not ever just a victim. That's the
Right.
point. Because if
Right.
you say someone's just a victim, you're dehumanizing people.
Mm-hmm.
There's always the spirit there which can say, yes, I'm a victim and I'm a human being and I can choose to get up tomorrow and continue to live my life. You see what I mean?
Yes.
Because I have an irrepressible spirit about myself, whether I like it or not. So I'm deceiving myself if I get into this sort of structural self pity.
I think you're
That's not
very
who you are.
inspirational, Roger. And I think you
Well,
have a lot more potential to be inspirational, but you need people to know who you are. The talkers that get 1 million views are just losers, grifters. It's like, why are people falling for these people that, what do they give them? The paranoia that's really prevalent,
mm,
especially in the United States, by the
mm.
talkers. How do you feel about that, and maybe reaching some of those people that, all right, there's twofold. Reaching the, let's say, the university students and all the protesters that are protesting passionately against the war in Gaza and what
Mm.
Israel's doing. And then those people that also are just floundering, not happy, but looking for something to place. How do we capture them?
Well, things have to be done all at the same time. You can't say, do this and then do that. You need to work on the culture, you work on the grounding philosophy, and work on the practicality all at the same time. So if I was going to work, if I went to an American campus, obviously I'm not going to because they won't allow me into America, dare I say
Aw.
it. But that's another story. But if I talk to some students,
Yeah.
first of all, I'm going to listen to them, right?
Mm-hmm.
you've got to respect people's situation and you've got to know where they're at. And then I'm going to say, okay, so this is what we're going to do about our foundational philosophy. This is what we're going to do about the culture. This is what we're going to do over the next 7 days in terms of practicality. And then we're going to get some data, and then we're going to create a strategy. And then I'm going to see you next week. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then you build up things all at the same time, right? So you might have like a foundational statement about what you're about. You might have a day away where people talk about their pain and stuff, and they go, okay, but we're all going to do this together, aren't you? So you're going to build that team, with some sort of mentorship. And then you're going to go, right, how are you going to go through the process of collective empowerment that's been done 1,000 times before? It's not rocket science, right? It's like, how are you going to get out of your bubble in the university? Okay, you're going to go and leaflet people. Okay, you're going to go and do an action and get on social media. Like at King's College, when I was at King's College,
Mm-hmm.
I went to get them to decarbonize. I went on a hunger strike. And before I went on the hunger strike, I threw paint all around the university, to cut a long story short. So they sent an email to 27,000 students saying, Roger Hallam's the most terrible person, he's denigrated wonderful university. And 70% of students obviously thought I was twat. But like 500 students were fantastic. So the first time ever, since 1820 or whatever, 500 students came out and engaged in civil disobedience. So
Wow.
this is a key, this is like the day-to-day toolkit, right? Is to look upon confrontation, not in some sort of angry sort of way. It's a mechanism to get publicity, to get more people, to do more stuff, to do more action, to get more people. You see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So one of the biggest tactical mistakes people make is they stay in their bubble. And it's totally understandable because, it's nice to be in your bubble and everyone says nice things to you and, life is relatively comfortable, right? But if you want to actually save the human race, the rule number one is you have to get out of your bubble systematically.
Okay.
In other words, you say, okay, here's a rota. We're on University Campus X. Here's a rota.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to do 10 hours of leafleting each week. You're going to get your leaflets. You're going to hand them out to other students. You're going to invite them to a party, to a social, to an assembly. And then you're going to enable those people to radicalize. And then you're going to have them do X, right? And then more of those students will come and do more leafleting, postering, social media, whatever it is, right? So that's it. It's nothing particularly grand to it. It's not even that complicated.
No.
It's a matter of systematically working out where you're at the moment, what your next step is. But all of that is pretty irrelevant unless you're also, as I said, dealing with the foundational stuff, which is how are we going to treat each other? See what I mean? If someone does something a little bit tricky, are you going to be really bitchy about it? Are you going to humiliate them on social media? No. Why? Because it doesn't fucking work. You see what I mean? Because everyone's fucked up. Everyone's going to do something stupid. Everyone sent a stupid a tweet at some point. Everyone's done that.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
So,
I sure have.
It's that phrase, isn't it? He throw the guy who throws the first stone, be without sin, in the Bible, right? That's what a lot of American left need to get their heads into, right? It doesn't matter if someone's impure. It doesn't matter because you are as well, for God's sake,
right?
Aren't you?
The purity test bullshit.
So stupid to think you're some sort of saint. Of course you're not, right? If you're a proper radical, you wouldn't even be at university, for God's sake. So just have a bit of humility and focus on the job. What is the job? It's to mobilize more people, right? Bring people in. How do you bring people in? By being nice to them, right? People don't want to stand there and get a whole load of political bile from you, right? What they want to know is what's happening practically. Okay, we're going leafleting. Oh, we're going to sit down there. Oh, we're going to do this. Would you like to do this? Would you like to do this? Give people choices, right? There's a whole rigmarole to it all, and it's pretty, dare I say it, straightforward once you've got your culture sorted out.
In the United
And
States, there is an attractiveness to this, but on both sides of the aisle, actually. It's just that I think that the right side of the aisle, the younger people, may not be as exposed to the necessity of joining this kind of movement versus becoming a Nazi. you know.
yeah, well, you're right. People will go with what opportunities they're provided for. So that's why the race is on in America to get out into the communities. And this is
All
my
right.
main message to Western, like liberal progressive publics, is if you turn away from the white working class, if you turn away from the people who feel really bitter about where the society has gone,
Mm-hmm.
then you're going to have fascism. And you only have yourself to blame, dare I say it, because
Okay.
we know about fascism. It's not like the 1930s. We know how it works, right? It works because people get bitter and alienated and separated because capitalism does terrible things to them. And the
Yes.
solution to that is not to be shitty to them, right? The solution to that is to engage with those communities and even engage with those people. Not the 1% who are psychopaths, obviously,
Yeah.
but
Right.
80% of, 80% of Republicans, this is my challenge to you, right?
Oh.
80% of Republicans, they just need like listening to. That's my challenge.
Well,
Like I
I
do,
do
I
it.
do,
I
I
talk
do.
to my neighbors who are staunch dyed in the wool, and I do talk to them, and I don't feel fear, and I do tell them about what's happening with the science of climate, and don't they notice on their farms that everything's changed here? I sure as shit do. I've been working my land for 10 years now. And so
Yeah,
do
yeah,
the
yeah.
and the Amish even understand that things are changing. So you find that bit of commonality and you're
That,
able to have an inroad. I do it
yeah,
all the
yeah,
time.
yeah. But it comes from listening, doesn't it? Right? It
Well, I
doesn't come
listen to
from.
them.
Yeah, exactly. Great. And what we need to do is systematize that, you see. This is why the assembly mechanism is going to be like the social institution that saves civilization. It's bringing people together, and there's a really simple mechanism, which is you get into small groups, everyone speaks for 2 minutes, and everyone shuts up and listens to them. And then you do it again, and then you do it again.
Hmm.
And everyone starts to relax because they see each other's humanity, right? And then you can start creating a common program of resistance. Because at the bottom, everyone's fucked off, because objectively we're being done in by the rich, right? Everyone sort of
Oh,
knows,
well, I
right?
guess, yeah.
So
We
that's
talk
that's
about
the
that all the time.
universal. So this is what happens in assemblies all around the world. You bring people together and they come together, but you have to give them the space to speak, and listen to them and be respectful. And this is what's missing from politics, right? Wherever this thing called politics is. And this is the big problem in the US, in my humble opinion, right? Is, the people on the left they do two things. They're so obsessed with how bad things are, and then they're so obsessed with how bad the opposition is. That's all fine, but that's not going to save America.
I know, but I fall into it. I'm
Yeah,
being
sure.
honest.
Well,
I can't
yeah,
stand
of
Project
course.
2025. I think it's frightening. I don't want civil rights to be repealed and go backwards, and that's where we're going in this country.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah,
very
yeah.
distressing.
I'm the same. I'm the same. Don't get me wrong, right? I'm not some
I'm not
like.
getting you wrong.
What I'm saying is when you've had your little rant in your head, don't
Hmm.
think that's all there is to it. There's another Sandy in there who's going, okay, so what am I going to do with my life? What am I doing? That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get
Rebuilding my garden beds.
you're going to
And-
do
yeah.
your garden bed. You're going to get this weird guy Roger on, and you're going to do two or three other things, and you're just going to go, that's what I'm doing. You see what I mean? But you need to get together with other people and strategize. It's not like, hey, this is what I'm doing. You need to get together with other people and then collectively work out what you're going to do.
Well, I'm doing
And
it this
then,
week.
and then you're on the pathway to something interesting, right?
I'm doing it this week locally, and
Right.
I'm goddamn right I'm going to print some of your stuff out and hand it out. I just want people to understand who you are and maybe get interested. And I do have enough people that want to hear what I have to say, even around here. So
Yeah, yeah.
why not? I always, I, like, well, I have nothing to lose because I have a lot to gain. I just get a little worried about where I live and the environment of people's minds that even having I have a 1970s ecology flag flying off my house, and I know people think I'm weird anyway around here, but they probably all think they have no idea what it is. So everybody that comes over, I have to explain to them, but then I use that as a teaching opportunity as why that came about and why we should care about the environment, and why we should cultivate and stop mowing everything and stop, killing everything.
Mm. Mm. Yeah, well, that's good.
People have no idea what overshoot is either. And I do
Yeah.
like to talk about overshoot and
Mm.
how to put it preface it in a way they understand it. There's a lot of hunters here, and
Mm.
they say they complain because there's not enough game, and that gives me an in to say, well, do you know what overshoot is, and how many people are coming down here now to
Mm.
hunt and kill the very ever dwindling amount of game. You have to
Yeah.
you have to communicate on their level, like you said, and
Yeah.
listen to them.
Yeah. Yeah. And you're doing that not because you're trying to be like cool or good or ethical. You do it
No,
because that's who you are, right?
that's who I
You
am.
exist to connect. That's what your life is here to do, is to connect with the other. And that's how you're going to fulfill yourself. So it's fundamental. That's my final thing to say, because I'm going to have to go.
Okay. Hey,
I've been out things to say anyway,
well,
right?
we have
I just
been.
won't stop
Oh,
rambling on.
no, this is great. We've been over an hour, and I completely have enjoyed this, and I hope you'll come back, because I'm sure
Yeah,
that
well,
once everybody watches, there'll be
we can
questions.
do practicalities. I mean, I've just done the whole waffly sort of fundamentals bits, which is what it is. But my day job is how to produce a good leaflet, and all that sort of thing.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you so much,
Thank
and
you so
wish you all
much
the best.
also. Same
Yeah,
here.
and
Come back.
yeah, I will.
All right.
Take care, all of you. I'll see you again. Bye.
Bye.
You need to decide to do this not because you're trying to be nice. Doing something because you're trying to be nice or ethical or moral isn't actually like that valuable. People decide to do something like a fundamental change in how they operate because of deep metaphysical reasons. In other words, this is the way the world is. It's like a fundamental realization that you are not like this weak, vulnerable individual. You realize you are part of a larger ideological project. In other words, there has to be a theory of society and a theory of life that is different to the capitalistic one, right? And we're not sure at the moment what that looks like. But if you think about the communists and the Christians, that's why they went out every weekend, right? They didn't go out every weekend because they wanted to be nice. They went out every weekend because that was their worldview. So it's something along the lines of shit's coming down the road, and this is going to create positivity because it will bring us all together to do great stuff to get ourselves out of this shit. So it's not just, hey, all this crap's coming. It's all this crap's coming, and that's going to be a good thing because it's going to bring us all together, and that's a good thing, right? You're not going to be miserable in bedsits. We're all going to come together and we're going to sort this fucking situation out.